fleet yard to a job site. They typically go to 1 or 2 job sites in a day, and statistically, these operators are driving vehicles for really 1/3 to 1/4 of the driving range of the vehicle. So we build the vehicles with modular pack strategy, so we can offer 75-mile, 100-mile, and 120-mile range options. And we find the vast majority of them really don't need more than the 75, 80-mile range. And so you've got, maybe they're going to drive 1/3 of that, leaving 2/3 of that battery, which is 30 kilowatt hours, 25, 30 kilowatt hours, for anything else they need on a job site. Now that's actually a tremendous amount of power. 25 kilowatt hours will run most North American homes for 4, 5, 6 days. Job site tools, the vast majority of job site tools are running at 120 volts, and that's just, we're talking watts here. And then job site tools, vast majority of needs of power are not energy applications. They're power applications where they're turning on the tool for brief moments. So when you're drilling something, it's only on for 10 seconds and off for 5 minutes. And even construction site cranes, when you have these massive construction site cranes moving, they'll move from right to left for 30 seconds, and then they'll sit idle for 10 or 15 minutes and then move again. So an electric vehicle's battery is perfect for a high rate of discharge over short periods of time. So minutes or tens of minutes at a time. So we use proprietary server-based algorithms that talk to the vehicle's ECU, that optimize energy consumption relative to, what's being plugged into the vehicle. So you can, on a little touchscreen in the vehicle, you can configure, do I want 120 volt power, do I want 240 volt power, or am I going to plug in directly to the battery and run a construction site crane at 480 volts DC off the vehicle? And as soon as you configure with that little button, you're configuring the mode of operation of the vehicle, and it optimizes the frequency of the electricity as it leaves the battery to work for whatever you need. And so it's tremendously easy to use despite the complexity of the need.
So the guy's working on the job site, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. How does he check how much energy he has available to him? I mean, is there a little Apple iPhone app or something?
There is, actually. Because we all have Apples around here, but it'll be for Blackberries and Android phones and everything else. I'm just loading it up right now to see. There you go. I might be able to see the...
Oh, yeah, okay,
So you'll be able to see state of charge, which direction the energy is flowing, how many kilowatts in what direction. You'll be able to see whether you're using 120 or 240 or 480 volts, how many kilowatts per second per minute. You can look at your statistical averages. You can turn on the heater remotely. You can unlock doors, using this as a key fob. Once the vehicle is 100% electric and you build in modular modes of operation, which we've done, you really have an incredible amount of flexibility with what we can do.
Okay.
And that's the part I think is very exciting for our market.
So let's talk about some of your partners here. Who do you have partnered with you on this project then?
Oh, quite a few. Not able to talk about a lot of them at this time, but probably one of the most important ones is GridPoint.
Okay.
Everyone in our industry certainly knows GridPoint. I would say they're one of the leaders in demand response utility management software. So we are not trying to reinvent the wheel here, and I think that's something very important for people to understand. What we're doing is we're adding value at the electric vehicle side, and we're aggregating the information of thousands of electric vehicles with our unique capability and putting that information onto a server that can talk to GridPoint or talk to Trilliant or other demand response networks. So the utility is a very, very complex beast. The way they operate grids and the way they manage power trading and demand response with energy sources like stationary or electric vehicle batteries gets really complex. So we interface with them, and that gives everybody from the average fleet driver to a fleet manager who's managing 100 vehicles, right up to a utility that's worried about thousands of vehicles in a region, visibility into the energy storage and even the location of the vehicles in real time. And so that's what we provide on our end.
Let's talk dollars and cents now, and
sure.
Feel comfortable to talk about what you can talk about and what you don't want to talk about. But obviously, I mean, this is really cool technology, and I can see lots of people, and we'll talk about one of those most recent customers of yours. There was a press release that came out on it. But what are we talking dollars and cents here for? Let's say my local utility wants to order 3 or 4 of these from you. What are they looking at ballpark, cost-wise?
Well, I would say that today when we're doing converted vehicles, they're sending us a vehicle that they've already bought and are starting to amortize. It might be 1 or 3 years old or so. The powertrain system we're installing today, may or may not pay for itself from fuel savings over a 10-year ownership period. And it really depends on the number of miles they drive and the assumptions you make around the increasing cost of fuel. So today they're about $80,000 for the technology when you're ordering one,
Right.
and we're putting them in one at a time into a converted vehicle.
Okay.
Now, that said, fuel costs over 10 years are around $50,000 to $100,000 for most fleets. So they may, even at these ridiculous costs, with the capital cost being what it is, it may actually make sense over the life of the vehicle. But we recognize the fleet market, whether it's a municipality or utility or government group, they don't have that kind of capital budget laying around. They have a capital to buy another gas truck that's roughly $25,000 to $30,000. So we have a very unique leasing model, and there's a world fleet leasing company that we're working with now. We'll be sending a press release out soon about it, that allows us to rent the battery so we can sell the vehicle, brand new vehicles by 2012, batteries not included. So when you look at a fleet organization, and I don't believe this will work in the consumer space, fleets have a cash budget for their trucks, and they have a cash monthly operating budget for their fuel and maintenance.
Right.
Fuel and maintenance will be somewhere between $50,000 and $120,000 over the average 8 to 17-year ownership periods in fleets. And they don't actually want to lose their operating budget. So if they buy all electric vehicles for $50,000, including the battery, that now costs next to nothing to fuel with electricity, their operating budget will go like this year after year after year.
Gets lower, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a problem, because
Right.
creating budgets for tax organizations is very difficult for them.
Right.
Rightfully so.
Right.
So we spread the cost of the battery out over 5 years. And by doing that, we can actually manage the usefulness of the electricity without them having to worry about the life and performance of the battery.
Oh, okay. Well, that's that's a cool model. Good.
Yeah, it's working. So we're taking out the 3 major EV adoption barriers. Battery technology risk, which is a big one when you're a fleet. So that's the one that makes them wonder, well, do I go hybrid? Do I go, biodiesel or all electric? I'm worried about new technology. We take out the capital cost of the battery, and we provide accessibility to that energy storage in a way that's more useful for the 21 hours the vehicle's not in operation.
Okay, now I assume the vehicles here have basically all the sort of amenities and performance that you'd expect out of the gasoline version then, right? They'll do 60, 80 miles an hour if need be. Range, you said anywhere from 75 to over 100 miles, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Battery pack, sounds to me it's what, around 30, 40 kilowatt hours?
Yeah, it's, well, because of the modular battery strategy, you could order a 28, a 35, or a 42 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the vehicles run up to 85 miles an hour, which is more than fast enough for highway speeds in interstates, and much faster acceleration than the original V6 that you would have found in that vehicle there. Obviously, the gears don't change because there are no gears to change, so it's a beautiful, quiet, smooth, linear acceleration, peak torque output at any speed.
Right. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to ask you, any difference in the systems between the F-150 and the Escape?
We're going with a different motor for the F-150, a larger motor. So
Okay.
the Escape has a 100 kilowatt motor. Right now that one has 125, but we're downsizing to 100 because we're not using any more than 91 kilowatts, and we're
Okay.
getting much better acceleration than a V6. And the F-150 is going to have a 150 kilowatt permanent magnet motor with a single speed gear drive as well.
Okay, good. So kind of wrap it up here. You put out this press release regarding having I think one vehicle at least going to Hawaii. What's the story behind that?
That's right. The vehicle landed in Hawaii early last week, the first of 4. So they've ordered 3 of the Escapes and 1 F-150, and this is really neat. This is where a lot of the whole concept came from. They have a need for balancing and protecting a microgrid. So on a military base of very large size, I think they're 25 miles across, this military base, they have everything that runs off diesel generators, and they have layers of redundancy to protect the system. So if there's a hurricane in Hawaii and the main generators get knocked out, they used to have backup generators and then lead-acid battery banks and 3 or 4 layers of redundancy. Now they have, as the second layer of protection in the system, they have our vehicles. And our vehicles are connected to a stationary battery bank, which we also delivered to them about a year ago, that stores energy from solar and wind that they have on the base. So we're firming solar and wind with a stationary bank. We can dump charge the stationary to the vehicles in a state of emergency. The vehicles can be deployed to any critical buildings where there's radars or IT equipment or anything that needs backup power. And whenever the vehicles are just sitting plugged in charging, they're scheduled as the second layer of redundancy in the system.
Okay.
So they're all talking wirelessly to each other and to us and to the military base to recognize whenever they're not being used. They're the fastest response, clean source of demand response for the base.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so
That's quite.
final question for you then. What are your aspirations for the business? Where do you see the company growing? You mentioned you getting into the new vehicles. Anything else?
Well, I think over the long term, 5+ years out, the technology that we've developed for passenger fleet vehicles, there will be a much greater need in a larger variety of fleet vehicles. You can, whenever you're flying, you just look down over those warehouses around an airport, and you can see medium and heavy duty trucks sitting, hundreds of them in a row, parked at garages, inventories being loaded up. Well, every one of those vehicles, if they were electric, they could back up the buildings and they could back up the grid. And we would be dealing with literally gigawatt hours of energy storage that would increase the efficiency and reliability of our grid and of society in general. And I really think that is the eventual long-term opportunity for bi-directional capable EVs, not just in passenger fleet vehicles, but the whole spectrum of fleet vehicles, and maybe one day for you and me at home as well.
Okay, cool. Well, Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here at EV World. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Okay.
Talk again.
Okay.